Hello, beautiful people. I just am going live so that I could do a debrief of yesterday's congressional debate that happened for the CD1 race. I just felt like I needed to debrief. I had made comments or posts about some of my thoughts about the congressional race as it was happening yesterday. So I just wanted to elaborate on why I was posting what I was posting about what I observed in this from these candidates. So I just want to start off MB100 right now, that out of these candidates, I have nothing positive to say about Damon Martinez. Absolutely nothing at all to say positive about Damon Martinez. I actually started a hashtag online that's hashtag never Damon Martinez. You can search that hashtag so you can see some of the atrocities that Damon Martinez has done to our community, and the things that he has done is unforgivable. I'm still in regular contact with many of the victims of his federal sting that he conducted against the people of color in Albuquerque. And I just want to say, how dare Damon Martinez run as a progressive Democrat, saying that he represents the people. Never Damon Martinez. So I'm just going to start there. As I discussed the other candidates, I just want to say I'm not speaking for any organization or any other people out there. This is my personal observations and debrief of what I thought of the debate yesterday for the CD1 race. I had made a post talking about what I felt like was like credentialed elitism, I guess is what I would call it. And when I talk about that, it was really sad to me as a person who's was a non-degreed professional, who's not a doctor, who's not a lawyer, who doesn't hold a master's degree, to hear from these candidates keep saying over and over again, well, because I'm a doctor, or because I'm a lawyer, or because I have a master's degree, that's why I'm up here. And I feel like that's a farce, because that's not supposed to be why you're running for Congress. You're supposed to be running for Congress as a Democrat, especially calling yourself a progressive, because you stand for the people and because you feel a connection to the people, to be a voice for the people. So several of the candidates did that, and I felt like it felt a little disconnecting from the people. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I did make that post about that, and I didn't like it. It got a lot of comments after I made that post where people were justifying why they feel like they should have said it, and I still don't feel like it's justified. If you're going to say you're a voice for the people, then be a voice truly for the people and talk about your experience in dealing with the people, and that makes you credible for speaking for the people. I don't want to hear about your academic research of what your theories are for the people. And I'm speaking specifically about the gentleman who was a doctor, who I had never heard from before in any of the other debates, or I didn't know where he came from. I was asking around from the people who he was. So that was, I thought, was kind of interesting, that came out yesterday. And I like Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. I like that she's a woman of color. I like that she's an accomplished academia. But she too fell into that trap where she said, oh, I always have to credential myself or people don't listen to me. So to me, that kind of language tells me, as a person who's not an attorney, that my voice is not heard. And if you feel like the only reason your voice is heard is because you're an attorney and you're an accomplished academia, I feel like you're not really speaking for me. And if you're running as a progressive Democrat for the CD1 race, I feel like you're supposed to be speaking for me. So I would like to see that language change. And I feel like like I said, I like Antoinette, but I feel like if Antoinette's going to be successful in this race, Antoinette needs to really work on um, not speaking so much as an academia of 26 years and speaking more as just a person, as a woman of color from Albuquerque who speaks for the people. I would like to hear more about things that she's done in the community to work with the actual people that she wants to represent. I want to hear more about that. And I've asked Antoinette for a personal interview, so hopefully I'll be able to get that personal interview with her so that I can talk with her directly about some of my concerns about her language, because I don't feel like her language, I feel like her language is disconnecting from the us's, the me, the people. And like I said, I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking for me and how it came across to me. Um, I like, I liked Palmoya was interesting. Palmoya had some interesting things to say about saying that, like, trying to say that he's different. I don't know that I trust him. And because during one of his responses, he literally quoted a meme that's trending on the internet right now, and to me that was a turnoff because it made everything else that he said seem fake. And I posted about that as well. What he said is, in response to talking about gun violence, and he quoted the meme that says, the only response to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Sounds like a person trying to sell two guns. And the way he presented that statement got a chuckle out of all of the crowd who was, it's great that the showing, there was about 250 people there, but it was a sea of white, older, retired progressives, which I know that's who votes, right? That's who shows up. So hopefully in the future we'll see more people of color and young people showing up, so that these things, when he's quoting a meme, it's like people are hip to what's really going on, because the whole crowd laughed and chuckled and thought it was so cool that he said that. And I was just like, that's literally a meme. Why are you quoting a meme in your response about gun violence? And I know that you're trying to be witty, but I felt like he could have done better. What I do know about Palmoya is that he is a motivational speaker for corporations, and calls himself as the voice for the millennials. I don't know how old he is. Like I said, that's what I know about him. People have told me that I should meet him and talk with him. Quite frankly, I'm a little turned off by him. I just feel like, again, I don't know how he's a person who speaks for the people. He's young and rich and light-skinned Hispanic, privilege passing. He did talk about being raised by a single mother of color. Or, I don't know, no, I'm sorry. He didn't say single mother. He just said a mother who is brown. And that he has had experiences that, his mother would say things and was not heard, and then when he said it, it was heard. And so he acknowledges privilege, which I think is a good start for being a voice for the people and trying to make that connection. I'm not feeling him yet. That doesn't mean that he may not be a viable candidate. Like I said, I got really turned off when he quoted the meme. I felt like the rest of the things he said after that were unauthentic. I don't have much to say about Pat Davis. He does public narrative very, very well. He says all the right things and has all the right answers. But his record on the city council is troubling. I think his support of the art project and Mayor Barry is very troubling. I sometimes question whether or not he's actually a Republican in his heart. He's an ex-cop, and I think being a gay man doesn't make you a progressive Democrat. I just don't see it. I'm not feeling it yet. And like I said, again, with him, I just feel like there's not authenticity. And again, he didn't talk really about any kind of work. Like, he couldn't draw on any experience where he actually was with the people in a movement fighting for progressive ideals. He just kind of has really good talking points, is what I feel. I want to shout out Deb Haaland for calling me out and saying that she supports my voting rights for felons that we're pushing. If anybody wasn't sure what that was about, what we're trying to champion this year, and hopefully we'll have a Democratic governor next round who will sign this into law. But what we want to see is we want to see voting rights never suppressed for people who are convicted of a felony. So right now, Vermont and Maine are the only states who don't suppress votes. California has a bill right now that they're trying to pass that will restore voting rights to inmates and felons. I know that there's been some confusion over this. New Mexico allows felons to vote if their sentences are concluded. So you have to go and get a certificate, and it's kind of a process, and you have to be all the way out of the system off paper to be eligible to vote, which is not a reality for lots of people. The reality is that lots of people who are felons are considered second-class citizens in our community, and they get stuck in a system and systemically get drawn back in and never ever get to see the right to vote. And so I don't want to see those votes suppressed at all. I don't think that, I think it's unconstitutional, and right now we're suppressing more votes than we did before the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. I'm sorry. And so that's what she was referring to, if people were not sure what she was talking about when she shouted that out. But I do appreciate her support on that. I think that it's really, really important that people start acknowledging this voter suppression that's happening, because it's happening again to people of color and the poor, and we're the people. Right? And I think that political candidates, should have to go into the penitentiary and campaign to their constituents, because all of those heads are counted when public financing is considered, when members of the community are counted, when tax dollars are collected. Though all of that is important, it's still happening, and those are still constituents, even though their voices have been stolen. And so that's what Deb Haaland was talking about when she shouted that out yesterday, and I do appreciate her shouting me out and the work that I'm doing on that topic. And that's what that was all about. As for Deb Haaland in general, I guess I don't know enough about her to say whether or not I fully like her platform. I don't know enough about her platform. I think she's saying all the right things. Her personal narrative was really good. I liked that she talked about being a single mother. I liked that she talked about the struggles of not having health care. Although when she talked about it, she talked about it from a Native perspective, which is appreciated, but it also doesn't attribute to the other things. Like when she said it, she said, I remember sitting in the Indian Health Center for hours and hours with a sick baby. Native Americans still have health care, but there's lots of us out here that don't have the benefit of the Native American Health Clinic. I'll give you an example. My son is sick. He doesn't have Medicaid right now. He doesn't qualify, and he can't get treated. And we don't have a way to get him treated. We just don't. We can't afford it. We don't have any money to get him treatment, and we don't have access to the Native Health Center. And so I think that's important to talk about. Deb, if you ever hear this, that you have to acknowledge that there's some out here that don't even have access to that. And so I'd love to hear her talk about that a little bit more. And again, I feel like she said a lot of the right things, but I think she needs to be more articulate in her points. I think that all of them missed the boat on gun violence. every single candidate missed the boat on gun violence, and violence in schools. I wanted to say Damian Latta, huge shout out to him. I just feel like he always speaks with so much heart. I feel like he's one of the candidates that comes across as really authentic. And I think that he's starting to get it on some of the social justice issues. I don't, you know, I don't know, I don't know how much I feel like he needs to spend more time with people who are in the struggle so that he can more better understand some of the social justice issues like criminal justice, poverty issues. Where he comes from and his background, I think, is important. I loved that he talked about his work on juvenile justice issues and the school to prison pipeline, and that he spoke with knowledge and authenticity about the juvenile justice system. And so for Damian Latta, I think he did a knockout job in addressing some of those things. I think that was just superb in the way that he discussed those issues. He was knowledgeable and he talked about it from a place of knowledge and being close to those people that were impacted. I like that he talked about he has direct DACA involvement and knowledge from his own family and personal story. And so I like that he was able to offer a lot of really important insight into immigration issues when he was responding yesterday. I wanted to shout out also the panel for having really deep questions yesterday. It wasn't like the last debate that they held up at the Pipe Fitters Union, where they had Chris Ramirez commentating, and they were asking really empty questions like, if you go to Congress, what are you going to do about bullying? That means nothing. And so I just wanted to shout out Working Families, and I think it was an NPC. I'm not sure who else was involved, but for, JD and Margarita and whoever else was on the panel, for having really thoughtful and deep questions that really challenged they really challenged all of the candidates, I think, and having to have really thoughtful answers. I think that all of the candidates did really well. I could see that some of them were really pressed. They all missed the boat on private prisons. New Mexico, just so that everybody knows, New Mexico is #1 in private prisons, and out of all of the United States, we average about 52% of all of our inmates are in private prisons here in New Mexico. It's a really, really big business, and that is not accounting for all of the detention facilities that immigrants are being held in as well. So there's a second layer of private prison money in New Mexico when you talk about immigration, and when you talk about just in general how many are being housed. Just so you know, overall the rest of the states average about 8% of their inmates in private prisons. So we're like leading the nation by far in private prisons. And a lot of the candidates tried to say that we've made progress and that we've dropped our numbers in private prisons. The Obama administration overall dropped, but New Mexico increased. So we need to be very careful about the narrative that's being spoken, and I hope that all of these candidates will spend a little bit more time becoming more knowledgeable about those issues. And I think mostly what I want to see, especially when it comes to gun violence, I just feel like we're in a very dangerous place right now, because the narrative has been like criminalization of children who are in crisis, and that's the wrong response. I just want to say that. And like I said, all of the candidates missed the boat when they talked about that. And when they talked about gun control, they talked about more laws and locking more people up. And as a criminal justice fighter and one who knows how broken our system is, I know that more laws that are coming from places of anger and fear are really dangerous for people of color and the poor. And I want to see all of these candidates spend some time becoming more knowledgeable about those topics so that they can speak from a place that's that's more logical and not based on fear and anger and public outcry. So that's I feel like that needs work. I really liked that all of the candidates, except for one, supported Medicare for all in New Mexico. And I know that's something that the Peter D. campaign is pushing for, and hopefully these candidates will back that, because healthcare, they all had that talking point. Healthcare is a right and not a privilege, but some of the candidates still were kind of reckless in their language by saying things like, I'm trying to remember exactly how it came across, but it was like access to healthcare. It's not about access, it's about everybody legitimately being covered. And so we want to make sure that gets corrected. We want these candidates to understand that it's not just an access issue. It's about making sure that every person is covered, and every person has Medicare for all. Like, that's what we really want to see ultimately. So I feel like there's more work to be done. I feel like some of the candidates did some really good work yesterday in helping us get to know them a little bit better. I plan to continue my one-on-one interviews. I hoped to have had them done more quickly, but I haven't been able to reach all of them. So I have Damian Lada's interview done. I plan to do Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. I plan to interview Deb Holland. I don't know about the others yet, because I just feel like the others are so far off from being progressive Democrats that I don't know that they actually speak for me, and so I don't know that I'm real interested in their platform unless I see some things different out of them coming out. Yesterday was kind of just more affirmation about where they stand. The one guy that's a doctor that's running that nobody knew about, he called himself a Christian Democrat who's pro-life but supports abortion. So that all sounded like an oxymoron to me. I don't really know what that means about where he stands. I don't know if he's going to be protecting my rights or if he's going to be against them. I kind of don't I don't know where he stands really, and to me that was enough to turn me off to him. And I hope that all the candidates can learn more about not speaking so much from an elitist position. If you're going to be a progressive Democrat that's the voice of the people, start getting closer to the people. Because I'm telling you that those closest to the problem have the best solutions. So you better start reaching out to us, all of the us's out here, and start getting closer to the problems of poverty and incarceration and school violence and guns. I buried a lot of friends over the years who were murdered by AKs, and none of those AKs I can guarantee were bought in a gun shop. So all of the rhetoric that you spoke yesterday does not help my community. So I don't want to hear that. I want to hear about real life solutions. I want to hear what you're going to do about poverty. I want to hear about what you're going to do about kids in crisis who don't have food, who don't have shelter, who are homeless, who are trying to figure out how to survive in the streets and have to carry a gun to protect themselves every day because they live in the streets and are still trying to go to school. What are you going to do for the us's? Because that is who's being affected by gun violence. We are the ones who have the solutions. We want to hear what you're going to do about the real issues that are impacting our community that cause kids to be in crisis. How are you going to get us health care? How are you going to get us health care so that we can start really dealing with mental health problems in our community that are happening because our youth are being traumatized every day by living in environments that are produced by capitalism and white imperialism and oppression and racism? What are you going to do about that? That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear about more laws that are going to make it harder to buy an AK. That's not what's killing my people. So I know that Parkland was a tragedy. I feel that. But because it happened in a white suburban school, now people want to react. I've been burying friends for decades who were murdered by AKs, and none of them were bought in gun shops, and this legislation will not help my community. So do some real work. I want to see real work out of these candidates. I want to see them getting closer to the people who are being impacted, because we lead. We're number one in childhood poverty. We're last in education. So when I talk about the our people, that's who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about rich kids at La Cueva who are afraid that somebody might come into their school with a gun. That's not who I'm talking about. Those kids have health care. They have access to mental health care. I'm talking about the people in our community who are suffering. That's who I want to see you address. I want to see you get closer to the problem. So shout out to all the candidates for the good work that you did yesterday, but there's lots more to be done. So that's my challenge to all. And I hope this debriefing meant something to some of the folks. I see some of the comments coming through. So shout out to all of you who took time to watch and listen to my little debriefing, and why I was talking shit on the internet yesterday from the debate. Peace.